coming up next on The Health Hustle.
What was the scariest moment for you knocking on a door?
I got locked in a guy's house. It was interesting. It was in El Paso. It was like my second day on the job. And I knocked on this guy's door. He was super genuine, didn't seem creepy at all. It's security. So you have to go in the house and you're showing people like their doorways. You're saying, hey, like you want to put a sensor here. How many windows do you have? Like you're in their house. So he lets me in. We walk through the entire house. We're talking about sensors. We have everything counted down. This is about to get a little bit vulgar or whatever, but we count down like how many sensors he wants, how many cameras he wants, everything. We're sitting down at the dinner table and I'm reading him this list of stuff that he wants to buy. So I'm like, okay, you're going to get this, 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 and this. And he just leans over like super, super close to me. He's like a 60-year-old man. And he goes, your eyelashes make me want to come in my pants.
No.
And I was like,
no.
Excuse me, sir? What did you just say? Like, I didn't think I heard it properly. And he's like, your eyelashes are just so attractive. And he started like grabbing my chair and trying to pull me closer to him. And I was like, oh, so I like stood behind the chair and he runs over to the front door and locks the front door and stands in front of it. And he's like, I'm so glad you're here. And I was like, I'm about to die. Like, I'm about to die. So I walked up to a lamp in his living room and I said, listen, you have two options. I'm going to throw this through the window and I'm going to get out of here and you're not going to be okay. Or you can unlock the door, you can let me go, and I won't tell anybody that we had this conversation. He's like, okay. And I'm like holding the lamp in front of his window. I'm like, let me out. And he unlocked it and I booked it and I definitely called the cops. I did tell people. But yeah, he locked me in his house. And I was like, do I want to do this job? But then something told me to continue to do it. And I did it for a whole summer.
Damn.
Yeah.
Respect for you to continue to do the job. I feel like that you're in the 1%.
What up, y'all? Corey here. On this episode, I had a chance to sit down with the wonderful Rachel Hague, who is the co-founder of KonnectHer with her partner Sam, and they have been able to grow a massive 10,000 plus person female entrepreneurship community in less than a year. Wild. Some of the things that we get into on this episode are competitive bodybuilding, which is something I actually personally also have an experience with, how she was able to find her voice early on, the challenges that forced her to grow up way too fast, living in Las Vegas and how that's influenced her community and her events, why she decided to live out of her car for an extended period of time, dealing with rock bottom moments, which she's definitely had, finding your purpose, the weirdest job she's ever had. That was a super fun conversation. Little hint, mermaids, dealing with rejection, a sales masterclass, a community building masterclass, figuring out who you are, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, one of the most common reasons that I see this is not having a well-defined niche. If you go to the link in the description, I have a free 3-step process that walks you through exactly how to get clarity on which niche is best suited for you and your business. Without further ado, let's go. Rachel, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I did a dance party on my way here so that I could bring the energy.
What'd you dance to?
Pitbull, like always.
What song?
Fireball. Da, 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 da.
Nice. That's a good hype song. You are the ultimate hype girl, so.
Apparently, that's what I've evolved into.
If you could stay close to the mic, that'd be super amazing for all of our listeners. So you are multifaceted, building community to business to public speaking to bodybuilding to once being a tomboy / girl to everything in between. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of how you've been able to build this 10,000 plus female entrepreneurship community, I want to start somewhere where you probably don't expect.
Okay.
And I've never done this before, but we're going to insert clip here.
If you ever want to know what it's like to be a bikini competitor, I want you to look at a plain rice cake and tell me you're excited about it. That's what it's like. It's pretty good. In my mind, this is heaven. Alright. Second best thing besides peanut butter that I Let's try this again. Alright. Second best thing that I get to eat. How many times? Okay, we're gonna try this again. second best thing that I get to eat besides a tablespoon of peanut butter today. Oh, banana.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back to this question. And I have a question about, do you still love rice cakes as much as you used to? And the reason
I know where you're going with this.
the reason I asked this question is, as I'm sure people saw from the clip that I will plug into this video, there's a great video of like just the most raw conversation with the camera about you prepping for a bodybuilding show,
Yes.
eating a rice cake. And I don't know if you're loving it or hating it, but what I loved most about it is that it was just very authentic, and it was you, and it was your voice. And what do you feel about rice cakes now?
Oh, I actually still eat rice cakes often, but I went through a phase of like hating rice cakes. Obviously, from that clip, you could see I ate a rice cake like every single day during my prep journey. That was in like 2018, and there's just no flavor. There's no spice. Yeah.
No salt, nothing?
No, because you got to track all that when you're in bodybuilding. I mean,
suppose.
sometimes you put salt on it, but you got to track everything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're not my favorite.
I know. I felt like I can relate to that because I've actually competed in a couple physique shows myself, and I do remember that. And I even remember like literally actually the day of the show, my like snack item was a rice cake with peanut butter and salt. And I was like the most.
And honey sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was amazing.
So I actually just did another show. I did one show in 2018, which is where that video came from. And then I did another show this last year at the end of December, so recently. And right before I went on stage, I was late. So they were like late to do my makeup. So I had to run from makeup, put my bikini on, and literally run straight on stage. I didn't get any time to like go up, like
get a
pump, nothing. Yeah. And I was like eating a rice cake while I was like running down the hallway to get on stage. And in the photo or in the video of me on stage, you could see I have it like in my cheek because I didn't get to swallow it all the way. And I was like, it was just in there. So yeah, rice cakes to me, horror stories, they don't go well together.
Yeah. And the reason I honestly wanted to bring that up is you seem to have found your voice really early on. And I admire that in a lot of ways, because I think that is a huge challenge for people, and it's something I wanted to tap into. Is like, it's very hard to be yourself, especially on camera or on a microphone or whatever. Even just like writing, when people write, it's very hard to find your voice. And I'm curious as to like, how did you find it so quickly? Like, what is it about you that makes you unique, I guess you could say?
I feel like it's evolved over the years, for sure. Even recently, this last year, I think it was like September of 2023, I had a moment where I was like walking on the beach and I was like talking out loud to myself, and I like had this like weird, you know, those moments where you're like by yourself and you're like, nobody can see this, it's okay. I was like talking out loud to myself, and I was like, this is what I sound like when I speak. Like, this is me, this is my voice. I just had this moment of like self-connection, because finding your voice, that has been like something I've really had to work around mindset-wise along my journey of life. When I grew up, my little sister was special needs. She was hard of hearing, and so she couldn't speak, and she spoke ASL in the home. And she had a diagnosis that nobody knew what it was. A lot of medical doctors, nobody had pinpointed what she had. And so growing up from age like 7 years old, I was on news interviews with my sister, speaking for her. She would sign to me and I would tell them what she was saying as they were questioning her on like how she feels or what she's dealing with or what she loves, all of these different things. And so I went from being my sister's voice to slowly trying to figure out who I was and being able to share my own voice. And then growing up teaching martial arts, of course, you're teaching. You have to teach children how to find their own voices in many different ways. So I feel like that's just been a key component of every aspect of my life, finding new ways to find my own voice and then help other people do that same thing.
Yeah, you do a great job of it, honestly.
Thanks.
Like, I honestly do. I think that's one of the reasons, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons people resonate with you, but I think that's by far one of the biggest ones I've seen is that when I watch or I've seen your videos or your content, it's like, I feel like it's you talking, not like some mask that you're hiding behind. And I think people appreciate that.
I think life is way too short to hide behind a mask. I've been there. Like, I've tried to be a certain version of myself. Growing up, I was a martial arts instructor at like age 15, teaching 6-year-olds how to clean their room and like get good grades. And so going to the karate school, I was always like the mentor. And I felt like I had to hide behind this mask of like, I couldn't be my teenage self because I had to be mature. I had to be an adult. And although that was a really pivotal time of my life to teach me entrepreneurship and teach me adulthood, it also made me feel like I was hiding behind a mask, and I had to figure out how to like let my true self shine and be able to connect with all ages of people. So I think it's really important to be your authentic self, and it doesn't really matter what people think about what you have to say. Just say it, and the right people will connect with you.
Yeah, you seem to have grown up very quickly. Admittedly,
I was an adult when I was like 9 years old. Let's be real. Like paying bills at 14 years old. Yeah.
and that is this partly just family dynamic and your sister and
Yeah, my sister was diagnosed, so my parents just had a lot of focus on her, in and out of the hospital. I got my first job at the karate school at age 14, so I was literally paying bills at 14, making money, and just being a mentor to other children as a teenager, like having to be that adult figure in their lives. I grew up really, really quickly, and I loved it. I think I missed out on a lot of things in my childhood, but it also really set me up for, I wouldn't say just success, but just being who I am today now with that knowledge and that experience.
I know you grew up in Las Vegas. When I imagine
Sin City.
Yeah. And like, just to give people context, I guess, obviously the first thing that flashes in my mind is like the Strip. But was that at all your upbringing or no? Not
really. I think Vegas has that persona of like party town, yes. But outside of downtown, it's just the suburbs really. But I do think growing up as like a teenager, there was like two things you could do. You could go hang out in the desert and they would just get plastered, which wasn't me. Or they could go downtown to the Strip and get plastered, which also wasn't me. Or you could get a job. That was me. So there was the party scene in Vegas. And I think that kind of makes you grow up a little bit faster because you see a lot of the realness. You walk downtown and you see prostitutes and strippers or showgirls or all the stripper signs, and your friends are on it, and you're in high school, and it's like, what is happening? So you're pushed to adult very fast in that city. But no, it's not just lights, cameras, action, party all the time.
I did find it ironic that you now do very high production, one could say, events for all these amazing entrepreneurs and also have come from Las Vegas. I did find that just very ironic that like that's where you've eventually led yourself.
That's where it comes from. So growing up, my sister went to a camp called Camp Cartwheel, and it was for kids with special needs and their siblings. And me being the like adult child that I really liked to connect with the adults. I didn't really hang out with kids my age. So I would always go around and talk to the counselors and the adults and the media team that was at this camp. And so I started helping the media team, and I befriended this woman named Sonia, who is like a second mom to me. And she actually owns one of the Las Vegas shows. And so around that age, 18-ish, I started helping her with the show and the back-end production, all of the lights, all of the cameras, getting all the performers up and going, choosing the next song for the audience, like everything behind the scenes. And that was part of when Sam and I came to Austin and we started running these big events and conferences. We didn't want them to be boring business conferences, so we brought a little bit of the spice, the Vegas production with it.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
That's why we had drag queens at our business conference. You gotta bring Vegas with you, baby.
I think there was money guns too, weren't there?
There was drag queens, there was money guns. We actually printed our faces on some of the money, and then whoever got that 100 got like an actual 100. We gifted them an actual 100. So there was money guns with money with my face on it. We had drag queens. We even had a monkey at one of our events. That one wasn't planned.
What does it cost to get a monkey?
That wasn't planned. Actually, one of our, your Vibe Attracts Your Tribe, one of our clients actually brought her pet monkey. And then it was just very social. So it was going around and shaking hands with people. People were holding it. We do ice baths. Business should not be boring. Let's be real.
What's the most you've ever dropped on an event production?
Between 30 to 40K.
Damn.
I think our last conference was around like 32. And that was like with some intense negotiating, like getting some partnerships, getting some sponsorships in there to like help us get it going.
Respect.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I don't play small.
No, clearly. It's a Vegas thing, right?
It's a Vegas thing.
You gotta shine.
Yeah, you gotta shine. I will say events are really expensive, and the overhead is really intense, especially when you're starting from just your own pocket, no funding or no idea of how to get sponsors. But I think the experience is so important. Like, you know this, hosting an event, like you are taking people through an entire journey of learning about themselves at this event. So you want to provide a great experience. So I don't mind dropping a little bit extra if needed, if it means everybody there is going to leave with something they've never experienced before.
As I was studying some of the events and stuff that you guys done, a sense of me was like, they feel like the female Tony Robbins. Like,
That was on the vision board.
Was it really?
It was.
Okay.
So when I taught martial arts, actually I was like 14 years old, I used to have to scrub the mats. Listen, kids would pee themselves like at least twice a day at the karate school. So every night we would have to like deep clean, bleach the mats. And I started turning on Tony Robbins every night when I would do this. So I like ingrained Tony Robbins into my brain. And then, yeah, that's been on the vision board. I mean, we want to do it in our own way, of course. He
Totally.
has his own magic that can't be matched. But yeah, a female version of Tony Robbins, I like it.
Do you have any entrepreneurship in your family?
Briefly, my mom started a cleaning company that now cleans a whole bunch of the different hotels and stuff like that. Like they have lots of employees and stuff under them, specifically to be able to, so she could step away and help my sister as my sister was growing up and needed her full-time care. My grandparents own a jewelry store. But no, not really. Most of my family just has done 9-to-5s and worked in construction or worked in business, medical fields.
So when you were starting this journey of entrepreneurship, you kind of felt like this was a new territory for you? Or did you have some education behind it?
I saw what was possible. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I listened to a lot of Tony Robbins. I remember specifically there was like a Tony Robbins audio that I listened to on YouTube when I was younger, and he would like pull people up out of the crowd to share, and they were business owners, and I was really inspired by it. But ultimately, I think it really came from watching my sister grow up with all these medical issues, watching my family have to take time away from work in order to spend time with her. I never wanted to be tied to something. I always wanted to be able to be on my own time and create. I love creating. I love being creative, and like having a vision and putting it to action is what I really love. And you can't always do that when you work for somebody else. So I didn't know what entrepreneurship looked like. I just knew whatever it is, that's what I want to do, and I'm going to figure it out along the way.
Yeah, I definitely remembered my tipping point too. I've heard you talk about this before, of not wanting to build somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
I remember that was a statement that echoed in my brain pretty regularly when I was working for someone else. And that's not even to like hate on anybody that has a job or work for somebody else. It was just like where this was going was not where I wanted to go realistically. Yeah. And I know you've definitely had statements like that are similar.
Yeah. I think employees in general are so beneficial to the world. Like, you have employees, I have employees, and like they're the best thing ever. They help make my company a thing. But I knew specifically where I shine best is being able to have a vision and then explain that vision to a whole bunch of people and bring them in where their strong suits are to help me execute that, which is the wildest form of business ever. Entrepreneurship is not easy. It's definitely a headache for sure. But I love it, and I want to see more people do it in the world because I think it's beautiful.
Were you a very good student?
No, not because just because I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my senior year in high school, I probably went to school like the most minimum amount of times that you possibly could. Love it. At the time I was like living in my car, and it was a whole thing, but school was not, I didn't love it.
You're just going to glaze over that? You were living in your car? What?
Yeah. My senior year in high school, I decided that I was going to do a bodybuilding show. My sister was in the hospital. They had flown my sister to another state, and so my parents made the decision of going and being in the hospital with her. So I was like 17 years old and kind of living by myself in my parents' house, trying to figure it out because I wanted to finish out my senior year. And a whole bunch of stuff happened. Me and my mom's fiance. We get along now, but at the time we're just butting heads a ton. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to stress my family out. I'm just going to go live in my car so I don't have to deal with this. So I can finish my senior year. I can continue doing the work that I do. I had like 3 jobs at the time. And yeah, my senior year, I lived in my car in the gym parking lot and would go to the gym, and then I'd go to school, and then I'd go to work, and then I'd go back to the gym and like shower and just literally sit at the gym and spend as much time as I possibly could until they were like, we're closing. And then I would go chill in my car until the next day and do the dang thing.
How long did you do that?
Probably 3 to 4 months during my senior year in high school. I would like couch surf too. I'd like go to friends' houses and accidentally fall asleep and, you know, like, hey, can I just kind of crash here? And nobody knew. My parents didn't even know at the time. Like they thought that I was staying at friends' houses or like living somewhere because I didn't want to stress them out. But I forget what we were talking about before that. But I think even that part of my life was so pivotal to, one, entrepreneurship, wanting to create my own life, like realizing like I can literally create anything, but I need to make it happen to get out of this situation. And then 2, being able to find my voice, like show up at school and tell my teachers, hey, listen, I live in my car. I can't come every day, but I'll still finish my homework. Or show up at work and be like, give me extra hours because I need X, Y, and Z to be able to put a down payment on an apartment the day I turn 18. So it helped me be able to be the mature version of me at that time.
Have you ever heard the expression of fear setting?
No, maybe.
I think it was Tim Ferriss that first talked about it, but here's what I love about that story is that, and I would really love to know what you learned from it, but this is what I'm hearing based on situations like that. When I hear stories like that, is that it sort of teaches you, obviously things could always be worse, but like it sort of teaches you how low it could get, and yet you're still fine.
Yeah.
So then everything above that feels like, oh my God, this is amazing and this is incredible and there's so much opportunity because I was down here.
Yeah.
My buddy once said it best. He said, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to know which way is up. And I think a lot about that because it's like more often than not, people that I have on the show have a quote unquote rock bottom moment, or they have a chip on their shoulder, or they've just been just in a very, very, very difficult circumstance. And I think there's just like the pendulum effect, right? Of like you get really low, which in turn allows you the opportunity to get really high.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious as to like those 3 months in a car, looking back at it now, what do you think it taught you?
So much. And I can agree with that 100%. I think rock bottom is the best place you can be to learn about yourself. And I've hit multiple rock bottoms, which in comparison to other people's rock bottoms are probably not that bad. But for me, in that moment, it felt really heavy. But those are the moments where you have to like pull out your true self and force yourself to get over your thoughts and step into this next version of you. When I think back to that version of me that was living in the car, I think just how caring I was of putting myself on the back burner at that time, not wanting my family to worry about me because they were focused on my sister. Me living in my car was a choice at that time, right? Like we make everything we do in life is a choice, whether we believe it or not. But I put myself on the back burner in that season for my success, for worrying about what my family would think about me, or worrying about what friends would think about me, or worrying about my family worrying about me, that I didn't focus on myself in that time. And then when I got out of living in my car, I was kind of in this like, how do you say it? Like oblivious version of like, I'm fine. Like I didn't feel my feelings. I didn't sit in the shit at the time. I just like pushed through every day, worked the 20 jobs, drank the energy drinks to get through it. And then when I got out of that was when I started to feel the feelings of it and assess everything, and then realize like, I let it get this far. Now I need to care about myself to get to this next season. That was a season of putting myself on the back burner.
Do you think you could do it again? And or would you intentionally do it again?
Live in my car?
I don't know, just like...
Sell everything, live in the car, not do anything?
Yeah, kind of.
I would. I think there's been many moments in my life that I called rock bottom, and I would go back to any of them to ask myself questions and to journal or read my journals. I read my journals from those moments all of the time, because I feel for the girl who I was in that moment. And it also gives me so much forgiveness for myself, so much forgiveness for the people around me that I blamed things on in that moment, now seeing it from a new perspective of where I'm at now.
You mentioned a book in the Celestine Prophecy.
Celestine Prophecy.
Celestine. Okay. First of all, what is that? Explain that to anybody who's listening. And second, when did this show up in your life? I'm curious.
Recently.
Okay.
Recently, yeah. The Celestine Prophecy it's really intricate. It's really woo-woo, probably for a lot of listeners. But ultimately, it's talking about how your energy is, like the energy in the world, and what the world would be like if everybody was energetically present, if everybody was energetically forgiving of the things that happened to them, if everybody dove into their own traumas or inner work and forgave the people in their lives, forgave themselves, formed new beliefs, knew where their beliefs came from, if everybody was just in that awake society, what the world would be like, and then how to tune into your own energy or whatever your version of God is, that energy, instead of taking from other people. In this world, you look on social media maybe, and it's a lot of people wanting other people's attention, other people to like their post or give them energy. This is how to fill up your own energy so you can pour out into the world versus trying to take from the people around you.
Interesting. Okay. The reason I asked that question, just to give people context, is like, I'm just curious.
Have you ever read that book?
No. But there's a lot of overlaps to that book that it just made me very aware of. But the reason I brought that up is like that degree of, I guess, kind of shedding all the material to be more, as you said, like awoke to the moment or the presence of life for the people you're around. And because there's a quote by, do you know Michael Singer? The Untethered Soul? That's his
yes, I've heard that.
That's like his most famous book. It's definitely like top 5 favorite books of me of all time. But he said something recently in something that I was listening to and watching, and he said the highest life you can live is that if you improve every moment that passes you by. In other words, you add to every moment that passes you by, because you, at every second of every day of your life, you have 2 options: is that you can take from a moment or you can add to a moment. And the highest life you can live is if you add to every single moment that passes you by. Yeah. And I was like, fuck.
Whoa. I actually saw an energy worker recently. I went through, this is after I read the Celestine Prophecy. I was like trying to put all the pieces together. You know, when you're doing your inner work and you're like, all right, I know all this. How do I actually like embody it? I went and saw an energy worker, and we were talking about purpose. And my question for her was, what was my sister's purpose? My sister passed away from cancer in 2020. And we were talking about purpose, and then she went into my purpose. And she was like, purpose is not something that we arrive at. It's not like, oh, I hit my purpose today, or I built this big community, now I have purpose in life. It's every single thing that you do. Meaning, like, let's say I walked in here and I slammed the door, and you saw me slam the door, and you were reminded of a moment that you were angry, maybe in your childhood. My purpose for you in that moment was to remind you of a moment of anger. Or let's say I came in here and I was like dancing, and it reminded you of a positive, joyful moment. My purpose was to remind you of joy. And so even in our moments of negativity, of course, we don't want to live there always, but we're still acting in purpose in everything that we do.
I love that. Michael actually ironically talks about that of thorns on a rose petal. Ooh. And he talks about how, kind of to your point of like something that might anger you or trigger you or bring something up, is that they actually just did you a favor because they just pointed out a thorn on your rose petal. And now you have an opportunity to look at that and go, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, why is that there? What did that remind me of? Yeah. Otherwise, you probably would have never even thought of it.
My business partner and I always joke that we have been like huge catalysts to helping each other grow just as humans, because when you are in a business partnership, you're pretty much like married. Like, you have to communicate everything. And one thing that we've done and that she really taught me was like, anytime a moment of comparison or anger or anything comes up that makes me be like, hey, we got to communicate this. How can I first look inward of like, where does this come from? Why am I feeling anger right now? And in most cases, it's like something that my dad did when I was a kid or my mom did when I was a kid, and it's like coming back up in me. Everything that we do is from our own perspective. And looking inward before you react to anything is so important when it comes to healing and just showing up with love in the world.
So we got super real, super fast.
Real, raw, and vulnerable.
And so let's lighten the
Take a
mood
breather.
for a second. And go back to rice cakes. No, I'm just kidding. But no, really.
The cinnamon rice cakes are the best.
What are the options even?
Cinnamon, lightly salted, heavily salted. There's like cheese rice cakes.
Schmer. I would definitely go with the salted, if anything.
Salted is pretty good.
I've been hashtag salt kinging things lately because the amount of salt I eat, honestly, my ankles swell at times. That's not a joke.
It gives you cankles.
That's not even a joke. I've been at the gym a handful of times and I'm like, what is
happening?
Why can I see my fingerprint in my ankle? And I'm not a big guy. Like that shouldn't be. Anyways. But seriously though, I do want to lighten things up a little bit. What is you mentioned the weirdest job you ever had? What is the weirdest job you ever had?
We're about to detour.
Yeah,
we're about to
for
go
sure.
completely.
I'm cool with that.
Okay. As an entrepreneur mindset, I believe that it is very important to, or at least something that has been a huge catalyst to my journey, was trying many different jobs. I was a fitness trainer. I was a martial artist. I was, ton of different things. The weirdest job I ever had was I was a professional mermaid.
Okay.
I was
very
a professional mermaid in Vegas. The tails are about 80-pound tails, silicone tails. They are like molded to you and they feel like gelatin.
Was this a hotel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we would be hired into big events.
Okay, got it.
But yeah, it's interesting. I can go through many story times, but my weirdest job was a mermaid.
How long did you do that?
Not very long. It was like 6 months or so. So at that camp that I mentioned earlier, that special needs camp for children with cancer, I was a lifeguard at one point in time. And there was this little girl who was diagnosed with cancer. You could tell she was really going through it. This was at this camp, oftentimes in the summer, this was the last moment these kids got to really be themselves outside the hospital before, sometimes the disease took over their life. And this little girl came up to me and she was like, "Is there any mermaids in the water?" And I was like, "Yes." And then I reflected and I was like, I just told this little girl yes. So me and one of the other lifeguards went and ordered these like cheap tails off of Amazon. And the next day we put this little girl who was in a wheelchair in a canoe and she went out in the lake. And then one of us came up and swam next to the canoe and surprised this little girl with mermaids.
Oh my gosh.
And it became something that we did every single year. The lifeguards, like one of us girls would put on the tail. We'd go out and swim with the kids and give them their biggest fantasy dreams. And then one year I wasn't able to make it to camp. I was the camp mermaid. I wasn't able to make it. And they hired professional mermaids from Las Vegas to come in and do that job. And then my schedule changed and I was able to make it. And so I showed up and I met these professional mermaids, didn't even know that was a thing. And everybody at camp was like, "Oh, this is the camp mermaid." And they were like, "Oh, we're actually hiring. You could swim in a tail. Yes. You can hold your breath underwater. Yes. Like swimming in a tail is really hard. It's like a lot of abs." So we went through the whole thing and I was like, "Yeah, I can do it." So they hired me for this gig. And then I did the full glam thing and I started mermaiding.
Can you make a full-time living mermaiding?
Yes. We were making probably like $100, $150 an hour.
Damn.
And I will say it's a hard job. Like these tails are heavy. You're swimming, you're doing tricks. Like it's like you're
doing tricks?
Yeah, you're
like flying
splashing
out the
people,
water?
you're
okay.
flapping your tails, you're spinning underwater. Especially if it's a fish tank, people can see you. So you're like swimming and you have to hold your breath for a really long time. It's a whole thing. There's a whole world. Like there are women that fully believe they are mermaids. That's their main lifestyle. There's mermen that have an obsession with mermaids. I learned that a little bit. Not my cup of tea, but but it's a whole world. It was definitely one of the funnest jobs I've ever done.
That's fascinating.
I'd still do it for fun.
This is one of the reasons I love doing this show. There's always, I swear to God, there's a depth to things that I just never know. And I'm the most curious human on the planet. So I love hearing stuff like that. Even when I was telling you before we started recording, the Primal Beef guy, they finish their cattle with fruit, with grains and fruit. And I was like, cattle eat fruit? I was like,
that's a different, yeah.
Yeah, blew my mind. Apparently it adds flavor. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. But it was another one of those things where I was like, fuck, okay. Mermaids. Crazy.
Mermaids. Mermaiding has actually been like a huge analogy that I use in entrepreneurship because in the first couple of years of entrepreneurship, oftentimes people feel like they're like drowning in their work, right? You have shiny object syndrome. You're trying to do it all. You're putting way too much on your plate. You have no systems in place. Like, it feels really heavy. But then on the outside, oftentimes you're trying to show up like everything's fine. Like, you're showing your clients like, I'm good. I'm not stressed at all, even though I work 12 hours a day. And that's a little bit what mermaiding was like. Like, you are pretty much drowning. This tail is super heavy. Your abs are burning, but you're still trying to be this like pretty princess that's like smiling and not choking on water and pretending everything's okay when you're like, you have this huge weight holding you down in the water. So ton of different analogies, but yeah, it was an important part of my journey.
That's a good one. I wonder if the professional diver people, you know what I'm talking about, where they like hold their breath and they go
Yes.
like 100 yards, whatever it is.
Yes.
I wonder if they're really good mermaiders. Maybe they just don't even know.
Maybe they don't
They're
know.
in the wrong sport. They should be in the mermaiding sport.
If they want to come test it out, I have some tails at home. But
There should be mermaiding polo where you like slap the ball with the tail,
yes.
right?
Yeah, we should build a community around that.
I'm not gonna, but
Mermaid pool party, let's go.
there's another analogy I wanted to tap into with you as well. Now that we're on the topic, you're into martial arts.
Yes.
You're good at it. You've been doing it since, what'd you say, 5?
Since I was 5.
5 years old. There seems to be some lessons and some carryovers from martial arts to that of also being a business owner.
Yes.
Mind sharing what those are?
Yeah, I think there's so many that they come up in moments. I wouldn't be able to tell you all right now, but I think part of it is just growing up from a really young age. You are in martial arts, you're ingrained discipline, you're ingrained self-esteem, you're ingrained communication, like all these different life skills that kids are not taught about. And along my entrepreneurship journey, I've started to notice all of those things come up of like, okay, I need to have positive self-esteem right now. Even if I don't know what I'm talking about, like I need to find my voice and make it happen. Or I need to have the ultimate amount of communication or respect for adults, like respect for experts in fields that know way more than me and be the small fish in the room when I'm networking and learn and listen. Or that discipline that comes from like doing your healthy habits, even when you're exhausted, when you're building your business and all the different things. So the life skills aspect was really important. Also the aspect of fitness, and that is just kind of one in its own of like, you have to be able to nourish your own body, know your own strength, focus on your health and nutrition in order to show up for your business. And then the mentorship side of teaching martial arts has really helped me when it comes to my speaking career, my coaching career, and just leading other people, learning those leadership skills at a young age.
I love seeing the parallels between other professions coming together for 2 reasons. One is that it actually teaches you better and it ingrains it better when you can tie things together. But it's also like a great teaching tool as well, kind of like what you did with the mermaids. I see the same thing as well of like having a background in the personal training, bodybuilding world. Of the carryovers from that to business are hilarious at times.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah. That and the confidence, like specifically around being a woman in a male dominated sport, especially as an instructor. Like everybody I worked with was men. You're just being punched and rocked all the time and you're small. But learning like the self-defense aspect, learning how to defend yourself, how to speak up for yourself, how to use your voice has totally carried over into entrepreneurship because it is a male dominated industry. You go to a lot of business networking events and it is, a lot of men, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to carry yourself in a very confident way. And I think knowing that I can defend myself when I'm out on the street or when I'm walking home from a networking event makes me walk into a room really confident, knowing that I can set my own boundaries and I can have conversations and I can also read the room.
Do you know who Ken Rideout is?
No.
He's like he's become a pretty well-known runner, I guess you could say. He's a bit older. I think he's in like his 50s, but he's getting faster like every year, despite being like a little bit older for a runner for that generation. He does a lot of marathons. But he said something that I thought was great, and I think about it all the time. And he said, it's easier to suffer than it is to quit. And he was given the analogy of how he was in an Ironman competition, and felt like he was giving it everything he could. And towards the end of the race, though, he ended up quitting and dropping out of it. He couldn't handle it. And he said he spent the next year regretting that he quit that race, as opposed to just like pushing through even more, even though he didn't think he had it.
Yeah.
And so I think about that quote a lot of like, it's easier to suffer than it is to quit when I'm like in the trenches of whatever it is, a workout, a business deal, whatever.
Yeah.
Is like, I would hurt way more if I just like gave up on it now versus continuing to push on.
Yeah. Like the regret of not trying is going to haunt you way more than the regret of failing. There's not really regret with failing. It's just like, okay, I did it. It didn't work. Let's figure out the next way to do it.
Yeah. It's hard to tap into that in the moment though, right? Like I have been on many endeavors where it's like every part of your soul is like, fuck this.
This is a hard no.
Yeah. Like, so I'd be curious as even on that topic of, cause I know you've probably had a handful of those moments in both professional and personal life of like, do you want to give it up? Is like, what do you do in those moments? What do you say to yourself? What do you talk to? Like, what's your strategy?
I think the thought of knowing my sister is looking over me is a big thing for me. That's my own driver, is like my sister would not want to see me fail. She would not want to see me give up. She'd probably make fun of me if I gave up. So like, I can't give up right now. But
it's a good sister.
Yeah, it's a good sister, great sister, guardian angel.
Yeah.
But outlook, there's an analogy or something that we used in martial arts. We would have kids, we'd say, punch my hand. Here, punch my hand. You did it. Punch my hand. You did it. Now don't punch my hand. Okay, you didn't do it. Try to punch my hand.
Try to punch
my hand.
How do I try to punch your hand?
Exactly. So like you can either do it or you don't. You can't try to do something. And so all these kids, we'd say, try to punch my hand, and they'd punch my hand, and I'd be like, no, you just did it. They'd try to punch my hand, and you just did it. You either do it or you don't. And so that's the way that I look at everything. It's like, I'm either going to do this all in, and if I fail, like at least I did it. Or if I try, like there is no trying. You either do it or you don't. If it's a hard no, it's a no. If it's a fuck yes, it's a yes. And so I like to sit with myself and say, is this a hard no? Does my nervous system feel good making this decision to do this? And if it's a yes, it's like, I'm going all in. Like I'm doing whatever it takes to make this happen, because there's no such thing as trying to do something.
I love that. Are you a Star Wars fan?
No.
Have you ever heard that quote by Yoda?
I've never really even seen Star Wars.
Do you know who Yoda
Don't hate
is?
me. Yes.
I think that's a Yoda quote. I'm almost positive. I think so. Well, he says it, there is no try, there is do or do not.
I got it from like a random karate instructor, so it probably came from Star Wars for sure.
Either way, for the record though, like you're 24.
Yes.
As I do research, as I always do, I couldn't help but feel old as fuck looking back at like some of
Wait,
your...
how old are you? Say it.
36.
36. Okay.
And I couldn't help but look back at some of the old content that you posted, and I was like, oh my God. Like,
Did you look at like OG weird content?
OG weird. I don't know.
Like old, like how old content?
I just Google search, and then I'll like go
Okay.
back through old stuff.
Okay.
And
what'd you see? Obviously, you found the rice cake.
that was my favorite by far. What did I see? I saw that you kind of went through phases of like tomboy, competitor, model, what it seemed like, and now more or less like business owner, entrepreneur, hype woman.
Yeah.
Those are the transitions that I saw. Did I miss any?
No, I think that's pretty clean cut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did the modeling thing come from? Was that just a follow-up because you competed and that was like the next phase, or how did that show? Or was it a Vegas thing?
Kind of. That was my version of, it was a Vegas thing for sure. There was, a lot of girls in Vegas wanted to get out to LA or get out to New York. And I had a lot of friends that were models, but they were way taller than me, and they were like going to New York for like catwalk stuff, and I'm like 5'1" and couldn't do it. So part of me was like, this is the people that I see in Vegas that are not going out and partying all the time, that are focusing on their health. These girls are doing photo shoots for companies, for gym companies, all that. So that was kind of just my step into that. It was also me trying to get over my own fear of rejection, my own fear of putting myself out there. Like, it's super awkward to get in front of a camera and like pose for random companies in fitness clothes and stuff like that. And so part of me was like, if I can force myself to do something uncomfortable and take these pictures and learn to like love myself and look at those pictures no matter what I look like and say, I love me in every version of me, then I could show up better in the world, because when you love yourself, you're able to love everything else. So some of those photos, I look back at them and I'm like, that's so uncomfortable of a moment. Or like, it was like a trashy, tiny photo studio that looked so ghetto, but the picture looks like this beautiful place. And so there's so many memories that come from those photos, but really it was me trying to learn to love myself and just showcase who I am.
What's the most challenging thing you've ever done? And I'll tell you mine to buy you some time.
Okay.
Stand-up comedy. There was a phase where it was purely just like comfort challenge deal, where I started writing jokes and started doing like a
Give me a joke.
give you a joke.
Right now. On the tip of your tongue, let it out.
Why? Oh, wait. What do you call a deer with no eyes?
What?
No idea.
That is so
Wait, hold on.
cheesy.
Boom. Okay.
Oh my God. You didn't have that button when you did stand-up comedy.
No, I did not.
Ta-dum.
That's probably why all my jokes fell flat. But so that was definitely mine. There's very few things that are more painful than bombing on stage, and I bombed a lot. I think all comedians do. It's part of the beast.
Yeah.
But yeah, curious. What are yours, or what is yours?
Door-to-door sales.
Oh, yes.
Number one rejection. I think it taught me the most about entrepreneurship, the most about business, the most about people in general, but it is the most uncomfortable job, 100%.
How many rejections do you think you faced in those days?
Hundreds, thousands. I mean,
How long did you do it?
I did it for a full summer in Phoenix, Arizona, when it is like 120, hot as fuck outside, and they drop you off at 9 a.m. They pick you up at like 10 p.m. if they remember to pick you up. So you're just like trying to survive.
Who's they? The company?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of us. You're just teenagers. They drop you off. They're like, good luck.
What were they sending teenagers up to sell?
I'm like 19, 20.
Okay, but still,
Security.
you were selling security systems
Yes.
for homes?
Security systems, Phoenix, Arizona.
Got it.
And then I did security systems in El Paso, Texas. Talk about self-defense came in real important there.
That's like a border town, right?
Oh, yeah. It's actually a really safe town because there's so much like they're assessing the border to make sure nobody...
There's a wall. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
No, we're not getting
I'm
into
just kidding.
politics here, okay? But it's a pretty safe town-ish. And then that was actually what brought me here to Austin, was doing solar here in Austin as well, years ago.
I respect that a lot. And I do wish, I tell this people all the time, I do wish there was a chapter in my life where I just got pummeled trying to do sales.
Do it.
Because like the life lessons.
Just take up a job for a month. It'll teach you a lot about yourself.
I know. Honestly, I would, if anything, I would probably try to do high ticket sales.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I feel like that's a very different strategy than just like door knocking. I think that's a little bit more whining dining, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've done both. And door to door is interesting because you are taking somebody out of their life for a moment. Like you think, what do you do in your home, right? You're watching TV, your kids are running around, you're cooking, there's noise, you're listening to a podcast, like you're doing your makeup, your hair, whatever. Like you are living in your own life. Nobody's bugging you. And then all of a sudden somebody knocks on your door and wants to just pitch you on something. And so you are meeting somebody at their most like raw and vulnerable point. So just the psychology of how you have to connect with somebody so quickly and then get into their safe space, get into their home and sell them something. I think there's something really special about that in-person experience. And solar was decently high ticket. I mean, you're knocking on this door, you don't know them at all. You knock on the door and now you're getting them to sign like $100,000 loan in less than 30 minutes. Versus phone sales, high ticket sales, I think is still the same. You have to learn how to connect with somebody. But if you're not having that in person, if they know the call is happening, like it's definitely a different experience.
What's the best time to knock on somebody's door, and or what's the best time to call somebody? Or what did you find in your experience?
Door to door, there's a ton of psychology that goes into like even looking at somebody's house. I would know by where the car tracks are in the front yard, how many people live there, who's the decision maker, and if everybody's home. The best time to knock on a door is when both decision makers are there. So that's typically a 9 to 5er would be after 5. People eat dinner around like 7. So the best time for me to knock was later, around like 8 to 9 p.m., as long as they didn't have signs of kids, because they just ate dinner. They typically had a couple drinks in them if they're chilling, drinking beer, and now you're able to have that open conversation and they're not trying to cook dinner or anything.
What was the scariest moment for you knocking on a door?
I got locked in a guy's house. It was interesting. It was in El Paso. It was like my second day on the job. And I knocked on this guy's door. He was super genuine, didn't seem creepy at all. It's security. So you have to go in the house and you're showing people like their doorways. You're saying, hey, like you want to put a sensor here. How many windows do you have? Like you're in their house. So he lets me in. We walk through the entire house. We're talking about sensors. We have everything counted down. this is about to get a little bit vulgar or whatever, but we count down like how many sensors he wants, how many cameras he wants, everything. We're sitting down at the dinner table and I'm reading him this list of stuff that he wants to buy. So I'm like, okay, you're going to get this, 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 and this. And he just leans over like super, super close to me. He's like a 60-year-old man. And he goes, your eyelashes make me want to come in my pants.
No.
And I was like,
no.
Excuse me, sir? What did you just say? Like, I didn't think I heard it properly. And he's like, your eyelashes are just so attractive. And he started like grabbing my chair and trying to pull me closer to him. And I was like, oh, so I like stood behind the chair, and he runs over to the front door and locks the front door and stands in front of it. And he's like, I'm so glad you're here. And I was like, I'm about to die. Like, I'm about to die. So I walked up to a lamp in his living room and I said, listen, you have two options. I'm going to throw this through the window and I'm going to get out of here and you're not going to be okay. Or you can unlock the door, you can let me go, and I won't tell anybody that we had this conversation. He's like, okay. And I'm like holding the lamp in front of his window. I'm like, let me out. And he unlocked it and I booked it and I definitely called the cops. I did tell people. But yeah, he locked me in his house. And I was like, do I want to do this job? But then something told me to continue to do it, and I did it for a whole summer.
Damn.
Yeah.
Respect for you to continue to do the job. I feel like that you're in the 1%.
The people that I had, like the higher ups in door to door at that time, I wouldn't say they care the most about your safety. There's so many people knocking doors that they're just like, do the job, get out there. Like, it's a hard job, rejection's a thing. Like, you'll be fine. And I had told them, they didn't really care. So they actually left me in that same neighborhood for like 3 weeks. And I would have to like run past his house and then like knock his neighbors' doors to like continue to make sales. And I sold everybody near him, and all his neighbors were like, yeah, he's a complete creep. Shout out to that dude. I hope he's doing well and has worked through whatever's going on. But yeah, it was it taught me rejection, and like confidence is such an important thing in sales, in conversations, in holding your boundaries and protecting yourself in all areas of life.
I respect your way that you handled that situation. Do you think did you feel like you could defend yourself? I mean, obviously you've done martial arts for a long time.
I think that's a whole story. There's so much controversy around self-defense. And the truth is, like, as a woman, men are bigger than you. There's a lot of people bigger than you that are stronger than you. Also, I think having awareness around the technique is better than not having any awareness at all. And so in that moment, I don't know what would have happened if things went south, but I do know I would have had as much knowledge as I have, which is more than the average woman, because I've trained so much, and I would have done absolutely everything I can to get out of that situation. But it was definitely scary. It was definitely one of those moments that was like, holy shit. And I was the only girl on my door-to-door team too, so how do you go back to a whole group of guys and be like, hey, this has just happened? Everybody's just like, you're good. You'll be fine.
Fuck that.
Again, we just took a turn for like, we're getting deep in this podcast.
Yeah, we're going to lighten things up again. Please turn this conversation another direction, everyone's saying right now. Okay.
What is the title of this episode? There's so many options.
I don't even know. Horror stories with Rachel? I don't know.
Rice cakes, door to door, and creeps.
Yeah, that's a catchy title.
Yep.
Thanks for that. You must have done marketing, which you
SEO.
did. SEO. Actually, fun SEO fact. So porn sites are like, obviously, like sex and whatever porn are like the #1 search terms on the internet. Oh yeah, by far. Like, it's not even close. Like, if you hit home run for the search term of like sex or porn, you basically are for sure like a billionaire, no question. But
that's so crazy.
Yeah, there's actually, you guys should go look it up. There's actually a fascinating story behind Pornhub that it's basically, imagine, like, have you seen the show Game of Thrones?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
So there's like, whoever's like king of what's that chair called in Game of Thrones? Iron Throne. So whoever's like leading the Iron Throne in that show is like, yeah, you're the most powerful person, but also everyone kind of wants to kill you. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it's like owning like massive porn companies. It's like, yeah, you have a lot of power, but like, a lot of people fucking hate you.
Yeah.
So anyways, super interesting side note. I want to go back to 2 things I wanted to make sure to cover in this conversation. One of them is just the topic of sales. And so having whatever your best advice for other people learning this skill set, which you obviously know something about. And the second piece of this, which you've obviously done, you and your partner have done a phenomenal job, is community building. Because that is admittedly a request I've had on the show, is just learning more about that topic. And so we could do either, both, whatever you're most comfortable with. But
we could do both.
Cool.
We can run with both.
Is there one you want to start with?
We're just talked about door to door, so I'll go into sales.
Let's hear it.
I think sales easily goes into community building too. A lot of people think that sales starts when you're like having the business deal conversation, like, do you want to buy this? And that's totally not true. Sales starts from the moment that you meet somebody. Sales is underlining a level of trust. And if somebody can trust you and they can see your true passion for what you're selling or what you're doing and your expertise, they're going to buy from you if it's aligned, right? So when it comes down to sales, there's 3 types of buyers. There's somebody that knows they have a problem and they are, have you heard this? You're smiling. They know they have a problem and they are looking for a solution. Those are like your hot buyers, right? Those are the people that are asking questions. Those are the people that are, they want to learn more. They maybe came to you. They're reaching out. They're commenting on your stuff. They're engaging on your stuff. Then there's the types of buyers that they maybe know they have a problem. Like they're aware they need to grow muscle in the gym, right? If you're a fitness trainer, but they don't know that a fitness trainer could help them get there, or they've never actually considered working with a fitness trainer. And so when it comes to selling to that type of person, your job is to show them what's possible of getting a fitness trainer. And then there's the people that don't know they have a problem and they're not actively searching for a solution. And, again, if you're a fitness trainer, in that realm, your marketing would be directed to showing them that they have the problem. And so in sales, I think people think it's very point blank period. How do I convince somebody to buy something often? Sales feels sleazy. Sales feels gross. But really, it's just a conversation. And if you can understand where your client is at on that buyer scale, you know exactly how to guide them to the next step and easily guide them to the sale for something that feels good for them and feels good for you. And I like to call it more of like permission-based sales. It's not about convincing somebody. It's about understanding where they're at, showing them what's possible, showing them that you could help them get to that point from A to B, and then allowing them to make that decision. And if you do that properly, right, if you meet them where they're at, it's going to be a no-brainer for them to buy that offer that you have.
I love that you brought that up. And the reason I was smiling is because it is something I've been tapping a lot more into, is just like learning the nuts and bolts of the understanding where somebody is at, and that understanding of like, are they problem aware, problem unaware, or essentially ready to buy? And I'm curious, maybe for listeners and based on your advice, if somebody was just learning even about, I guess, that framing of understanding where somebody is in a buying journey of like being problem aware versus not being problem aware.
Yeah.
Was there like frameworks that you used? Were there things like scripts, or like how were you able to figure that out in, like, I guess you could say, the early days of like having those conversations?
Yeah. Well, I think door to door, right, taught me probably the most about sales. I did sales in martial arts. I do sales in my company now, but door to door was like, that's only sales. And the biggest thing that you want to learn when you're doing door to door is how to overcome objections. And objections are actually buying questions. So a lot of people will shut off the second they hear somebody ask a objection or a buying question. But the truth is, it's a good thing. It shows interest. And so if you want to understand where your buyer is at, do the least amount of talking. Instead of explaining your product and how it can benefit them and how it can do this, this, and this, and all the different things, simply asking somebody a ton of questions, that is how you're going to overcome all of these objections. For example, when I did door to door, one of the number one objections is I'm not the decision maker. The second I knock on the door, the question is, are you the person that typically makes these decisions, or do you have a spouse or a business partner that you talk these things over with? And before I ever go into a presentation, I make sure that decision maker is present. Or when it comes to, money investing, if I want to gauge if they're able to actually purchase whatever I'm selling, well, how often do you invest in yourself? Where do you allocate your funds? How much do you make every single month? What is it that you do for work? Now, by asking these questions, I automatically know if they're even willing to invest in themselves, or if they feel good about investing in themselves before I ever ask for them to purchase something. And so if you can understand those core objections, which is, I'm not interested, I am not the decision maker, I already have this, finances, if you can understand those core objections and just ask questions to your audience, you're going to understand where they're at, and then you're going to be able to serve them with that next step in their buying journey.
What if somebody knew somebody that was going to be interested in their product? You were talking to somebody that was interested in their product, and you knew that you had the solution to their problem. What were maybe the questions that you would ask somebody in that situation? Because I think that's good advice. I think that the listening more than we speak is great advice. I wonder if people are getting tripped up on like what questions to ask. Like, how do you gauge that, or how do you filter that?
So the first thing, especially in entrepreneurship, right, is of course niching. You help people with this. And so understanding what is the one problem that I solve. Maybe you solve a ton, but what is the one problem that I solve? And then we always want that other person to understand why having this, not just understand that they have this problem, but why remaining in this problem isn't serving them. And so I would ask you, you know, how long have you, or what is your problem? What have you been experiencing? How long have you been experiencing this? What have you been doing to try to solve this problem on your own? What have you heard works when it comes to solving this problem? And now you just told me how long you've been dealing with it, how long you've been sitting in this suck, if you've done anything to try to change it, which is going to tell me the objection of like if you've already tried to get a fitness coach, or if you've already tried to invest in something and maybe it didn't work for you. And now I'm able to understand where you're at when it comes to investing in this thing and guide you to actually seeing why you don't want to remain in that problem.
I like it. These are great advice.
I feel like that was like deep in sales.
We got it.
Makes sense.
It
made sense.
It does. And well, I mean, even if I was to try to wrap that into a bow, I think more often than not, it's understanding where somebody's at in their own personal journey and hopefully presenting a solution to that next step or being the bridge to that next step.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think of it too. It's like your job is not to convince anybody. Your job is to show them what's possible. And you would be doing yourself and them a disservice by not showing them what's possible.
Totally.
So if you get in a sales position and you show them what's possible and they're not ready, you did your job. Because you wouldn't want somebody to invest in your company if they weren't ready to do the work, right? If you're a fitness coach, you don't want somebody that's going to just say, okay, I'll do it, and then not actually follow the program. And so your job is just to show them what's possible and then serve them when they're ready.
So is there carryover to community building then in regards to the skills that you're just describing?
100%. I think when it comes to building a community, influencers have been doing this for a really long time and they're not given enough credit. Like building a following is the same thing as community building, just online. Us, particularly as entrepreneurs, we've built an in-person community around our business, which I think is so, so important. But part of that is sales, just getting somebody to be a part of the community. There's a weird narrative around community sometimes. People have imposter syndrome stepping in a room. People maybe were bullied growing up and they don't know how to step into a networking event. So you have to sell somebody on the idea of even joining a community, even if there's not a physical investment. So sales goes into all aspects of marketing and community building.
What do you think has been the key to your guys' community? I mean, I know you're very intentional. I know there's been a lot of evolution from workouts to coffee meetings to now obviously doing quarterly events.
Yeah.
But in that journey of multiple mistakes, and I think you've done what, over 100 events now at this point?
Over 100, yeah. We did an event every single week for 2 years in a row in the beginning.
What would you say are the key pillars to what you guys have built now today versus what it was on ground zero?
I think the number one key pillar has been word of mouth marketing. I think we're really good at knowing who our client avatar is, what problem we can help them with, and why they want to be a part of a community. And then building a culture so strong within this community that we don't have to market it because the women feel so much a part of it that they want to tell their friends about it. And that is, I think that's just the fundamentals of why anybody should build a community around their business, because now you have people that are your ideal clients also inviting their friends to be a part of something that's changing their lives versus you always trying to be the person marketing.
I was writing about this in my newsletter recently, is that I don't know, for some reason I think that everything from a business standpoint starts with attention and it leads to deepening that relationship. And if you want it to continue, there has to be a community, I keep seeing that again and again. And maybe it's unique to now versus what it used to be, but like every time I'm looking at these quote unquote successful businesses is like, I feel like that's most of them, is like they found a way to gather attention, deepen the relationships, and then build a community behind it that makes it continue to sustain.
Yeah.
And based on what I've seen anyways.
Yeah. I think as a business owner and an entrepreneur, no matter how many employees you have one day, no matter how big your business scales, it's always going to grow beyond you if you want it to be sustainable as a company. And you physically, as a community leader, as a business owner, cannot connect with every single person in your community and put that much energy into every person. It's just not sustainable. We would burn out, right? And so building a community around your business also provides this aspect of support for your clients. So they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel understood, and they feel like they're not alone on this journey that you're taking them through. And then that gives you the ability as the business owner to kind of step back and not have to pour as much individual energy into each person because you know they're already nourished, and you can now focus on the opportunities of scaling the business, which was your original vision, and impacting more people, helping more people along the way.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. What's next for you, Rachel?
Ooh, I don't know. What's next for you? Give me a thinking moment.
Table
turned.
Need me to buy you some time? Honestly, for me, it's just very relatable to this conversation is like the community building piece to me is just continues to be more and more interesting, even to the point now where the next event that we're doing is it's a paid event. They've always been free in the past, and it's going to be just a little bit more intimate. We're going to do a little bit more experience based. We're going to have the sauna cold plunge, and I'll probably bring somebody in.
Ooh.
So it's finding ways to continue to just add as much value as possible through this community, but also make it serving in some way that's just not always free events at the end of the day. So
yeah,
that's what's next.
I love it. I love it. For me, I think when it comes to KonnectHer as a company, Sam and I have spent the last 3 years really building. This year and this last 6 months has been a lot about building systems to make the business sustainable on its own, so that we can really just focus on the things we love, which is providing great experiences, showing up with energy, and helping the women that are in our coaching program get to their next level. And so instead of us doing all the busy work, we're really trying to build some systems around that so we can show up with the highest level of energy in the community. And then personally, our conversation really aligns with this. I have felt a need to share more of my martial arts journey. For so long, it was something that I kept a secret, because, it was my safe place. I would go there, I would train, I would see this alter ego of myself, my tough version, and nobody at school knew about it when I was a kid. I didn't really tell anybody about me being an instructor. And so recently I've been feeling that a lot more. I've been training a ton here in Austin and meeting a lot of cool people in the martial arts industry out here. And I don't know fully what it's going to look like, but I really want to share that more. I really want to share that aspect of how it's helped me grow as a person and open up the doors for more women to train in that, sport and find their confidence within that sport, learn how to protect themselves, those side of things. So
where are you training out of?
I've trained a couple places out here. John's Gym in North Austin is really awesome. And then Void Martial Arts in South Austin has kind of been my hub. We've been filming some content together. They're super cool. Definitely a safe space for people to train. So both of those.
We'll send them all your way.
Well, let's do it.
I have a round of rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Whatever the first thing is that comes to mind.
Okay.
What's your best business advice?
Best business advice. Fill your cup. Everybody says that, but if you are not taking care of yourself, you will burn out. You can't help other people doing that.
Best marketing advice.
Magnetic marketing. Instead of focusing on telling, focus on how you can attract people to come to you, attract people to ask questions, attract people to want to put in their own 2 cents, and that will bring the community aspect to marketing.
I mean, your rice cakes did the job, let me tell you. What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
That you can make it absolutely anything you want it to be. You can have a vision and create it and pivot and change it, and it's your own little baby that you can grow over time.
Sometimes that's my least favorite part because it feels
that
like
too.
Painting on a blank canvas, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. When are you the most productive?
Ooh. In the morning, I'm the most productive when it comes to personal development and fitness. At night is when I get my most copywriting content ideas.
Whoa. Okay. Who is your inspiration?
My sister,
I knew it.
100%.
I love that. Tell me one secret or something most people don't know about you.
I was a mermaid.
Yeah, that is such a good one. Is there like video footage of this?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
God.
photos.
Oh my gosh.
I'll send you one.
I did not find those. Tell me, what would you change about yourself?
Nothing.
What's your favorite app or resource you're using right now?
Ooh. Spotify. I think podcasts have been huge for me because it really gives you the opportunity to step into someone's brain and listen in on conversation. So I just really enjoy listening to podcasts.
Other than your own show, what's your favorite show?
This one.
Duh. Thank you. When were you the happiest?
I think now over the past year, I'm happy in all moments, even if they're heavy moments, because I realize it's part of the journey. But I think the happiest moments I can think of in my past were moments when me and my sister would just dance and not worry about anything. No matter how sick she was, no matter what was going on in our lives, we would turn on music and just dance and all the problems went away.
Pitbull?
Pitbull.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yep.
What's your favorite part about Austin? And you can't say the people.
That's good because it's not the people. I'm kidding.
Oh.
I think Austin really opened up my eyes when I moved here to community, of course, and not just the people in it, but like the aspect of a whole bunch of people getting together around specific things. Also, I really just love the personal development space here. Like I love the ability that people are encouraging other people to become the best versions of themselves.
You're leading a lot of people to do that. I have one last question. Before I ask that question, I want to acknowledge you.
Thank you.
For
Aw.
getting out of Vegas and joining us in Austin, for doing the grind of door knocking, for having the discipline to compete in bodybuilding shows. I know what that feels like. For being kind of a hidden badass from your martial arts, and for helping so many entrepreneurs to chase their dreams.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge you too. I feel like your podcast was one of the first ones I ever heard of here in Austin. A long time coming. It's been like 3 years since I've been here, but I think that you do a really great job of highlighting people in all different aspects of life, all different walks of life around one centered thing, which is entrepreneurship and health. And health is one of the most important things that anybody can focus on. So you do a great job of that. Thank
you. Appreciate that. Last question. It's your best piece of advice to your younger self or somebody else in that situation of just getting into entrepreneurship. If you were to go back to ground zero and talk to young Rachel or somebody else that was starting their business, whether that was community building or coaching or whatever the case might be, what's maybe the best piece of advice you would give to yourself or someone else in that circumstance?
I think for me, it's finding your voice. And, you know, people want to work with you because you're you, not because you're an expert in any industry. And when you can do the work of figuring out who you are and noticing where your beliefs come from, noticing why you are the way that you are, you're then able to understand other people at a deeper level too, ultimately connect with people at a deeper level, which is going to help your business so much, and it's going to help in personal life too.
You have that in spades. Rachel, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show, and if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.